by Liberal appointees. I thought Mr. Erskine-Smith had more integrity than that, than to worry, not be worried about $400
Point of order.
million
Like, what is this absolute? This is absolute.
Whoa, whoa,
Come
whoa.
on.
Okay,
come on,
all right.
Come on. My integrity.
Let's. What? Okay, all right, all right. Mr. Perkins, I'm going to ask you to get back on topic. I'm going to ask Mr. Erskine-Smith. I understand your irritation. First of all, your language. I'm going to ask you to retract your language.
I'll retract when he retracts. He impugned my integrity, deeply unparliamentary. All right, Mr. And we can both retract, Chair.
Mr.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Kennedy and Looney. How y'all doing? So Nathan Erskine-Smith, who is as low as a Liberal can be, is calling out the Liberals, calling out Mark Carney's budget. Let's take a peek. Then we're going to jump over to CBC and watch those hacks break it down. They're having a panic attack over there. All their paid-for panelists are going to break down Nathan Erskine-Smith's betrayal. Not one bit surprised here. Nathan Erskine-Smith, as I mentioned, is as low as a Liberal can get, but he's trying to make his own way, I guess. He wants the Ontario leadership, Liberal leadership. He's such a goofball. Let's take a look and a listen. It's not bad to see controversy around these Liberals, though. They were just clapping like seals when Chris Donchma betrayed the Conservative Party and crossed the floor. Now Nathan Erskine-Smith releases this little video from his crappy little channel, and it's a big deal. Let's take a peek.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
I've seen the budget described as investment-focused, as austerity, as reckless. Can it be all of those things at once? Look, I won't go through all 493 pages, I will spare you from that. But here's a rundown of what I see as the good, the bad, and the ugly from Budget 2025. Let's start with the good. In the face of threats, the government is rightly prioritizing actions to secure our sovereignty. That includes support for businesses and workers affected by tariffs, a Buy Canada procurement policy, significant new infrastructure spending, and a huge commitment to the Canadian forces. There are also smart, forward-looking ideas, like the Sovereign Fund for Critical Minerals, taking a lesson from Norway. And there are new dollars for innovation and to attract talent and research from the U.S., whose administration seems intent to run intelligence out of its country. There are also useful actions to respond to rising youth unemployment, to support PSWs, to protect the Canada Disability Benefit from taxation, and more. There's lots to like in many ways, and more generally, I welcome the focus on productivity, both to drive economic growth in the private sector and to get the most out of public services, although yes, care is required to ensure those efforts don't go sideways. Now to the bad, or more fairly, where expectations were set at a level that we failed to meet, including on the question of generational investments. First, stalled climate action. I don't want to be too dismissive here, as the Canadian Climate Institute rightly highlighted the importance of a strengthened industrial carbon price. But apart from that promise, there was nothing new. Yes, we are moving forward with strong methane rules and clean investment tax credits, and these are key pieces. But we are also cutting tree planting, moving away from an emissions cap, winding down greener homes, and the budget offers no new money for climate action. On housing, we've got the beginnings of Build Canada Homes, a tax cut for new home buyers, and some dollars for housing-enabling infrastructure that are important but unfortunately very unlikely to move the needle on development charges to a degree we would like. It falls short of these specific promises in our platform, and it unfortunately falls well short of the wartime effort that many of us thought we'd deliver. Now, the fiscal frame of spend less to invest more is actually one that I like. Operational books generally in balance, and a capital deficit spending more easily justified. But the budget adds $140 billion in new spending over 5 years, $90 billion net after savings, and only 36% of the net new spending is capital. Related, there is a lot of deficit financing here to cover non-capital new spending. Yes, honoring our initial 2% commitment to NATO made sense, and a middle-class tax cut was a platform promise. But these are far and away the two largest financial commitments. They are non-capital, and they should be paid for. My kids shouldn't pay for today's military or for me to save $400 of income taxes. And much-needed OAS reform, the largest non-capital growing expenditure, it still isn't part of our political conversation. Now, the ugly, and there isn't a lot that falls in this category, thankfully. First, we see the budget commit to a new inefficient fossil fuel subsidy for LNG facilities. Look, if there's a business case for LNG, there is a business case. We do not need more public dollars chasing fossil fuels. Worse, we see major cuts of over $2.5 billion over 4 years to international development assistance. Real Keir Starmer energy that unfortunately caters to a prevailing, albeit short-sighted current view among wealthy donor countries. A Pearsonian budget this is not. Now, I know these are not easy times and a budget process involves tough choices, of course it does. It's also only a first budget. It can't be expected to solve all problems. And the devil will be in the details of implementation in many cases, as it always is, from infrastructure and housing, to innovation spending, to the industrial carbon price, to finding efficiencies in government in a manner that is fair and effective. Overall, the budget meets the moment in part on questions of sovereignty and with a focus on spurring economic growth at home. And look, it's certainly not a budget that should throw us into an election at such an uncertain time. But fairly, it does not live up to its promise of generational investments. I joked that it was a pretty good progressive conservative budget. I joked. I'll get flack for that. It's a joke. But hey, some conservatives agree.
All right, let's swing over now to CBC. They're having a panic attack. David Cochrane is like on the edge of his seat. He can't believe the lunacy of Nathan Erskine-Smith. He's liberal, bro. He's got no loyalty to anybody but himself, just like every other liberal backbencher, every other liberal hack minister. Here we go. CBC is having a panic attack.
Okay, Vandana, that's like Scott Aitchison, Elizabeth May, and Don Davies had a kid. Because it's sort of all of their criticisms all at once. I'm pretty sure Nate Erskine-Smith is a Liberal member of Parliament. I may need to double check, but what do you make of that messaging coming from the caucus?
Yeah, and I would say there are elements of this video in full where he also compliments the budget, so if people want to check it out. And I'll give two perspectives. One, in my old job, when I was in Prime Minister's office, I did hate this. I wanted people to say one message. But having from the outside, I would say it's actually really important, especially as you alluded to the current makeup of the Conservative caucus, that while he has criticisms that I think are fairly fair on the budget. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that in one caucus, you could have someone having criticisms and have a robust discussion on the budget. He is accountable to the people who elected him. And in Beaches East York, there are people who will care about those issues. So he is talking about them. He says positive things about the budget as well. But I think that's actually healthy for democracy. If you are too hyper-partisan and people are just become clapping seals behind the Prime Minister, that's not credible for Canadians. So I think for Canadians, they feel comfort that someone like Nathaniel Erskine-Smith is part of the caucus, that he can raise these issues, that he can drive some policy, that he has influence. So I think that's actually better, especially as we're talking about hyper-partisanship, what is possible for what is best for Canadians. I think this is actually something that will cause comfort for Canadians, that you can have this conversation in the kind of caucus, and that perhaps the Prime Minister will listen to those kind of points that Nathaniel Erskine-Smith brought forward.
Brad, what do you make of that? I mean, Vandana is right. There is more to that video, but it's like 4.5 minutes long. So, we can't play the whole thing. And that's not a criticism. Like, Nate Erskine-Smith's a pretty effective communicator in this medium. And while, yes, there are things he does like, there are clear points there about the falling short, the housing thing in particular. It's exactly what Scott Aitchison, the Conservative critic, and Mike Moffat, who does work in the space, said. It is a retreat from the election promises to now, right?
Yeah. So if anybody wants to know why Nate Erskine-Smith is not in cabinet, this would be an example of that. Now, to Vandana's point about how, it's a democracy and all that good stuff, 100%, and yes, he's outlining criticisms from each of the three opposition parties that you've outlined. But being in caucus and being in government is also a team sport. And right now, the Prime Minister, for Liberal MPs, their job is not to highlight to highlight the inadequacies. It's to promote the aspects that the Prime Minister wants. The opposition's job is to highlight that which is in there. So, I'm all in favor of having MPs stand up for their constituents. There was nothing about his particular riding that he really spoke to. He spoke of general Canadian ones. Not helpful for the Prime Minister or the sales job that the cabinet has on this. And team players, unfortunately, those that rogue individual MPs don't get a lot of sway within caucus because they can't be counted on to pull together as a team.
Well, Kate, Brad is right. Politics is theoretically a team sport. Maybe if you want to run for Ontario Liberal leader, you might do things to carve out your own brand. But this is still a Liberal member of Parliament criticizing the Liberal government in pretty significant ways, while the Prime Minister is out selling it.
Yeah, geez, Nate, could you not have released that video any earlier just to take some of the heat off of the blue team in terms of people that were dissatisfied with the approach of their caucus? Yeah. No, I think that Brad is quite right. It is a team sport, and I'll just use a corporate analogy here. There's often a lot of debate and discussion amongst the senior management team before a decision is made and taken by the CEO. That is the opportunity, if you are a member of the government, to raise your concerns and try to push for what it is your constituents want to see or what your business line might want to see, if I'm sticking with a corporate analogy. And so everybody goes into that boardroom, they says their piece, and then they leave with whatever the decision is made by the CEO. And so the opportunity for Nathaniel Erskine-Smith to have those concerns came and went. And I think that, it's not to suggest that he has to dilute his perspective or his objective on certain issues. This is not the first time that he has, stepped out of line with the party line and the caucus line. But at the same time, you show that you are a part of the team by supporting the leader and supporting the decisions that are taken, and then letting your constituents know that you're going to keep pushing on these issues and keep fighting for their interests, even if it's not the decision that was necessarily taken in last week's budget.
Rob, I think corporate analogies are appropriate when talking about the management style of this government, but Nate Erskine-Smith is no longer on that board, right? He was in cabinet, and now he's back in the backbench. So I don't know if he gets that input up front, but he certainly has made his opinions known now. Is this damaging for them at all?
As a scribbler and a babbler who has complained about backbench MPs being reduced to the role of trained seals balancing a ball on their nose and barking their approval whenever required as a backdrop, we've got to find it refreshing. We do because
when people speak honestly, it's always better.
That's right. And so if you have good relationships with backbench MPs on both sides of the aisle, this is the kind of thing that you hear. And in the end, he says he's going to support the budget, in fact, right? He's not going to vote against it. But you're getting a look at what really some backbench MPs, a lot of them, might be thinking. And actually, I thought it was fairly solid analysis, and I say that as someone who risks getting bounced out of the studio and replaced by Nate Erskine-Smith in the power panel.
Yeah, well, I mean, Vandana, it also, I think, in some ways, shows the transition in policy and focus the party is going through right now, does it not? Like the things Nate Erskine-Smith was talking about there, obviously they're very core to the type of liberal he is, right? The generational fairness, climate action, and aggressiveness on housing. Not saying those don't apply to Prime Minister Carney, but they're not the way they were under, say, Justin Trudeau, at least as a leading item.
Yeah, I mean, every iteration of a budget is different, and a budget won't be everything to everybody, right? So you'll make certain decisions. As someone who's once signed off on budget decisions, there's always something more you can add. There's always something, a new program that could be added or a new way of looking at things. This is partly where Prime Minister Carney wants to go. He wants to bet on long-term investment. He wants to bet on, working with private sector and different levels of government to help catalyze the economy. And I think he's really focused on that. And the big pieces that you could argue haven't been focused on the last 10 years as well. Like, as to Nate Erskine-Smith's point, there's different focuses. But I think that's okay. I think there are young progressives in this party, whether as members or as young staff or other members as well. But I think for them to see Nathaniel Erskine-Smith saying these things, I don't think that harms the Liberal brand. While it can be annoying, but I do know, and I've heard this directly from the Prime Minister shortly after he won, he does believe the caucus doesn't have to say the same thing. That for them to be authentic to their voters and to their party brand overall, they have to be able to share what their constituents are concerned of and what they're able to talk about.
Well, look, Brad, if that is a real operating principle, I think that's a good thing for Canadian politics, right? That you can have disagreement and move from the orthodoxy within reasonable levels of criticism, in terms of the conversation and the debate. I mean, Nate Erskine-Smith is still voting for this budget. He's still supporting it. But I can see when question period comes back and the vote happens on the 17th, the Conservatives quoting him back to his boss, in their critique of the spending plan.
Yeah, I think it's fine to have. Of course, it's fine to have differences within caucus or within cabinet. But once those are aired, there has to be one face of the government or of a budget. Doesn't matter what stripe this is. If all you're doing is enabling the opposition to further harm and further distract from your chief spokesperson's message, whether it's a prime minister or a premier. This, we'd say this at the provincial level as well. You can't sign up and say, I would like all of the spoils of running under this team, but then whenever I want to, I can step outside for reasons I still don't see what the benefit that he gets by doing this. I only see harm to his team and to his boss. And aiding and abetting the opposition and critics. I don't see how this advances any of those. What he should have been doing is advocating for those before the budget was finalized. I didn't hear him advocating for more international aid or any of the other things that he talked about prior to the budget. Now that it's done, he's now criticizing those cuts. Again, lots to criticize about the budget, but when you're in government, you gotta play on the team that you're a member of. You can't pull in and out whenever you want to. The structure, the system isn't built for that.
Kate, I see you nodding along. Is Nate Erskine-Smith united the New Democrat and the Conservative in a similar viewpoint on this? Is that what's happening here?
Yes, uniter in chief. No, I think that there's really two things at play. The first one is Nathaniel Erskine-Smith's own ambitions. And, he's been pretty clear that he's at least kicking the tires at perhaps another run at the Ontario Liberal Party. And they really are poised to make gains at the expense of the NDP. So it's not strange, I think, that he would be flexing some of his progressive bona fides as that party goes through a leadership review in a race at the Ontario provincial level. But the other piece of this, of course, is that Nathaniel Erskine-Smith is part of the team. He has a misalignment, I think, right now that a lot of progressives may be feeling in the party. We just talked about, do red Tories have a home in the Conservative Party? I think there might be a lot of progressive liberals, I'll call them terracotta liberals, people that might go orange and red. Where do they fit into the Carney government and to the objectives that are being put forward there? So Nathaniel Erskine-Smith is not the only person that that may fall into that camp that's in caucus or even necessarily cabinet. And certainly, to Vandana's point, a lot of the younger people that support the Liberal Party. So I think that might be something that the Carney government may continue to grapple with. You see them trying to kind of have it both ways on environmental policy, for example, but we may see more Nathaniel Erskine-Smiths in terms of discontent with moving away from some more of those progressive policy banners that were carried by the previous Trudeau administration.
Yeah, Rob, last 20 seconds to you. There's a lot of maybe shifting in voter coalition and who you're targeting based on where you are in your leadership right now.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of touched on it in terms of the vacancy at Queen's Park. There's not a Liberal leader right now. But when I spoke to some Liberals, Ontario Liberals over the weekend, they said this is the kind of behavior that makes us have some misgivings about him. Is he an unguided missile? Can he keep a caucus together? Can he unite a party that's down in the dumps right now?
Yeah, and the supporters will point to the authenticity and these sorts of things, but who knows, right? Because it's been a rough ride for the Ontario Liberal Party. All right, we got to leave it there. Vandana Cotter, Kate Harrison, Brad Levine, united in this one, and Rob Russo.
We'll wrap it up right there, gang. Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney, we work really hard in this channel. I'd appreciate a subscription, at least smash the like. Come and join one of the live shows. Verify it for yourself, then subscribe. You'll enjoy the live shows. That's it. Get your Canadian federal politics right here. Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney. Like, share, subscribe. We spend a lot of time watching Canadian federal politics, trying to filter out the good things that we learn from to show you. This was one of them. Anyhow, till the next one, thank you for watching this one. Click one of the other videos floating around here. There's lots. That's it. Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney. Like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video. Ciao for now.